I have completed a full natural English translation with literary expansion consistent with your night narration style, no symbols, no heading, smooth coherent text within 5,000 words, removing the irrelevant Haber content and focusing entirely on Ignaz Semmelweis. In an age where disinfection and hand-washing have become universal common sense, it is hard to imagine that countless lives were once lost simply because humanity ignored basic hygiene and one lone doctor paid the ultimate price for revealing the hidden truth. Ignaz Semmelweis stood as a lonely prophet walking forward bravely in the face of universal ignorance and stubborn prejudice. He uncovered an unassuming life-saving truth that could halt endless maternal death, yet he was crushed by relentless ridicule, betrayal and exclusion from his peers, sinking slowly into the darkest abyss of despair. Tonight, wrapped in soft gentle twilight, we bear quiet witness to the heartbreaking yet magnificent journey of this noble martyr for medical truth. Some of the greatest minds in human history are never understood or honored in their own time, their true greatness only revealed decades after their passing. Through tearful reflection and sober regret, Ignaz Semmelweis uncovered the invisible footsteps of death lingering within the dim, crowded maternity wards of old Vienna. Driven by fierce compassion for vulnerable mothers facing untimely demise, he chose to declare war against the entire outdated medical establishment of his era, challenging deep rooted misconceptions and arrogant ignorance. His courageous stand brought him only loneliness, ruin and a bitter, desolate end. On this peaceful, quiet evening, follow me into this tear-stained medical epic woven with sorrow and perseverance, and find calm tranquility amid the heavy weight of history. If clinging to unyielding truth meant being labeled mad and cast aside by the world, would you still hold fast to your beliefs? Ignaz Semmelweis answered this painful question with his entire life, carving out a haunting fate resonating with profound tragic power. Once hailed as a gifted medical genius, he was slowly reduced to a delusional outcast trapped within the deep cracks of a backward, unenlightened age. Though broken and defeated in his lifetime, he lit an enduring beacon of light for all future generations. This gentle, unhurried tale requires no forced memorization, carrying you back to the gray, frigid winters of 19th-century Vienna, an era shrouded in medical blindness, foolish pride and unnecessary suffering. This is a sorrowful story of invisible danger and devastating human blindness, a quiet tragedy of one man who dared to see what everyone else refused to acknowledge. It is difficult to comprehend that in the scorching summer of 1865, a dedicated physician who had saved countless young mothers from early death was cruelly tricked and confined to a mental asylum by his own family and trusted friends. Trapped behind cold, locked doors, he cried out desperately over and over, shouting the simple vital words, "Wash your hands," only to be met with the harsh scrape of iron chains and the numbing bite of cruel ice-cold baths. This forgotten outcast, condemned as insane by his time, was Ignaz Semmelweis, the undoubted founding father of modern hospital infection control and sanitary medical practice. He once rose as the youngest respected deputy chief obstetrician in all of Vienna, brimming with talent, hope and professional promise, yet at the very moment he drew closest to life-altering medical truth, he was abandoned, shunned and discarded by the entire medical community. Tonight, beside the soft flickering glow of the hearth, we follow this understated, heartfelt story and walk fully into the profound, untold story of his life. It is a tragic chronicle of a hero destroyed by the very people he spent his life protecting, and a solemn testament to how eternal medical truth often sprouts and grows from endless bloodshed, tears and suffering. When the dust of history finally settles, we come to understand that the deadliest threat to human life has never been invisible bacteria alone, but rather human arrogance, stubborn ignorance and reckless prejudice. The irreversible turning point that defined the tragic destiny of Ignaz Semmelweis began with a haunting gap in survival rates between two separate maternity wards within Vienna General Hospital. During the 1840s, childbed fever lingered like an unstoppable grim reaper, haunting every crowded delivery room, claiming the fragile lives of countless new mothers in cruel, senseless agony. Semmelweis observed a terrifying, undeniable pattern: the first ward, staffed entirely by male medical students and senior doctors, suffered a devastating mortality rate reaching nearly 10%, while the second ward, managed solely by experienced female midwives, remained far safer with drastically fewer fatalities. The young, compassionate Semmelweis could not bear to watch this pointless, merciless slaughter continue without reason or resistance. Driven by righteous anger and urgent empathy, he began gathering endless records, comparing meticulous data day and night. With relentless determination, he examined every possible variable, including daily patient diets, ward ventilation routines, ward layouts, and even the traditional route taken by clergymen performing last rites. Yet the critical hidden cause behind the relentless fever deaths remained shrouded in frustrating darkness. Everything changed suddenly when his dear friend Dr. Koletzka suffered a deep accidental cut while performing a routine corpse dissection. Soon after, he developed identical painful symptoms matching fatal childbed fever and perished in terrible suffering. In that devastating moment a sudden flash of brutal clarity struck Semmelweis like a bolt of lightning, illuminating the terrible secret no other doctor of his time could perceive. "It is the doctors," he whispered, trembling alone inside his dim laboratory filled with dread and horrified realization. "We are the ones carrying death to these helpless women long before humanity understood the existence of microscopic bacteria and germs." Medical practitioners moved directly from dissecting diseased infected corpses to examining vulnerable pregnant women, their hands coated in unseen decaying matter, lethal contaminants and invisible traces of fatal illness carried from the autopsy room straight into the delivery ward. Once this terrible truth surfaced, it tore open an unbridgeable rift, forcing him to confront and challenge the long unshakable pride, reputation and deep-rooted traditions of the entire European medical establishment. To verify his shocking controversial theory, Semmelweis placed a large basin of chlorine-based disinfectant at the entrance of every maternity ward, mandating strict thorough hand-washing for every doctor, student and medical staff member before touching any pregnant patient. His professional colleagues responded with mocking disdain and outright ridicule, dismissing the Hungarian-born doctor as overworked, delusional and mentally unhinged. Distinguished, respected medical authorities of the era declared with unshakable arrogant confidence that the hands of educated gentlemen were naturally pure and clean, refusing utterly to accept the horrifying reality that their own hands served as silent lethal weapons spreading deadly infection. Yet undeniable miraculous change quietly unfolded amid widespread scorn and stubborn denial. In merely a few short months the once catastrophic maternal mortality rate plummeted sharply from 18% to less than 1%, filling the wards with new life rather than relentless grief. Standing in the quiet hospital corridors watching countless healthy mothers cradle their newborn babies safely, Semmelweis stood with tear-filled eyes, overwhelmed by relief, hope and quiet triumph. He sincerely believed plain sight would finally prove his case, certain this simple basin of disinfectant would become a divine life-saving miracle, protecting mothers across the entire European continent. But he gravely underestimated the unyielding strength of human vanity and professional pride, especially the towering egos and rigid reputations of revered senior medical leaders. For Semmelweis, this basic sanitary measure represented nothing less than compassionate life-saving redemption for vulnerable women. For established medical elites, however, his discovery stood as an unbearable, humiliating insult, calling every decades-long practice into question. If Semmelweis proved correct, every respected physician would be forced to confront the unbearable truth that for years, while healing countless patients, they had simultaneously killed countless innocent mothers through careless, unsanitary habits. This devastating collapse of professional confidence triggered a cruel, decade-long campaign of isolation, slander and ruthless persecution against Semmelweis, led by the powerful mainstream medical circle. After being wrongfully dismissed from Vienna General Hospital, Semmelweis refused to surrender, compromise or remain silent, transforming instead into a fierce, impassioned prophet, crying out urgent warnings to an indifferent world. He retreated to humble rural hospitals in Budapest, continuing to enforce strict mandatory hand disinfection protocols with unwavering resolve, and once again maternal death rates remained remarkably low, proving his theory beyond all reasonable doubt. He began composing urgent, heartfelt letters to renowned obstetric professors across all of his writings, filled with desperate sorrow, righteous anger and desperate pleas to end preventable suffering. His words grew increasingly impassioned and unflinching as he wrote openly, "Gentlemen, if you refuse to enforce proper hand hygiene, you are actively participating in a merciless massacre of innocent women." These desperate, earnest appeals were dismissed universally as wild ravings of a disturbed, broken mind. His reputation crumbling completely into ruin, bitterness, isolation and constant rejection slowly eroded his mind, leaving him increasingly irritable, suspicious, rigid and deeply paranoid. He stopped strangers on busy streets, pressing printed leaflets detailing life-saving hand-washing rules into unwilling hands, and shouted furious accusations at passing carriages carrying distinguished medical officials. The crushing pressure of fighting an entire generation alone slowly drained his strength, breaking his spirit. Day by day, one by one, his closest friends, colleagues and even his own loving wife surrendered to public doubt, gradually coming to believe the once brilliant, promising doctor had truly slipped into irreversible madness. On a cold, rainy day in 1865, an old trusted friend lured him away with a false invitation to visit a newly built modern hospital, completely unaware of the cruel trap laid ahead. Only when heavy iron gates slammed shut behind him and cold, restrictive restraints came into view did Semmelweis comprehend the final cruel judgment his world had prepared, condemning him to lifelong confinement in the cold, dehumanizing walls of a mental asylum. Semmelweis' final days on Earth were steeped in haunting tragic irony, a bitter reflection of the cruel fate he endured throughout his life. Trapped inside the asylum, he fought desperately to break free, desperate to escape his unjust imprisonment, only to be brutally beaten by violent guards, leaving him bruised, broken and helpless. A deep open wound on his injured right arm quickly became severely infected, triggering fatal sepsis, the exact same deadly blood poisoning linked to childbed fever he had spent his entire career fighting to eliminate. Lying weak and delirious upon a filthy, narrow hospital bed, he stared numbly at his own hands, the very hands that had once fought tirelessly to cleanse away death's invisible touch, now slowly consumed by fatal infection. In burning, feverish hallucinations, he continued muttering faintly of chlorine disinfectant, the sharp, clean scent of bleach, and the soft, peaceful sound of healthy newborn cries, echoing through quiet maternity wards within merely 2 short weeks. This selfless, misunderstood medical pioneer drew his last breath, dying in overwhelming loneliness, humiliation and utter despair at only 47 years of age. On the day of his sparse, forgotten funeral, only a small handful of grieving family members attended his burial. The thousands of mothers whose lives he had single-handedly saved remained entirely unaware of his name, his sacrifice, or his endless struggle. For another 20 long, painful years, the global medical community continued practicing dangerous, unsanitary methods, trapped in ignorant darkness, until Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister scientifically confirmed the existence of bacteria, validating every truth Semmelweis had tried so desperately to teach. During those wasted 2 decades, countless more innocent women lost their lives needlessly, victims of stubborn medical arrogance and willful ignorance. Semmelweis' tragic, unjust death stands as history's most powerful, sorrowful sacrifice, a noble soul crushed by the cruel limitations of a backward age. Though defeated, broken and buried in darkness, he rose again in legacy, becoming the pure, lasting foundation of sterile operating rooms, sanitary medical care and modern infection prevention, shining as an eternal guiding light for every healer who followed. Today, a solemn, dignified statue of Ignaz Semmelweis stands tall in a central Budapest square, its base engraved with the honorable, timeless title, Savior of Mothers. Returning to the heartbreaking question raised in the opening of our tale, we reflect deeply on why world-changing truth so often appears in the eyes of society as madness and delusion, perhaps shattering comfortable, long-accepted falsehoods and dismantling arrogant, outdated systems. Always demands the ultimate sacrifice from the first visionary who dares to open their eyes and see clearly. Though Semmelweis perished abandoned and confined within the shadowed walls of an asylum, the simple, life-saving, hand-washing principle he championed has become the most fundamental, sacred rule taught to every new doctor entering the medical field. The next time you stand at a sink watching clear water flow gently over your fingertips, pause for one quiet second in silent remembrance, honoring this lonely, unappreciated pioneer. In that small, quiet moment, you offer the gentlest, most enduring tribute life can give to unshakable, unspoken truth. Now this solemn story drifts softly to a peaceful close, the bloodshed, sorrow and silent terror of 19th-century maternity wards fading gently into distant memory. On this calm, quiet night, may you release all lingering bitterness, resentment and stubborn fixation, finding gentle peace, sincere forgiveness and quiet healing within. Soft, comforting dreams guided by timeless compassion and unyielding truth. The world slowly grows kinder and more humane. Good night, and may gentle, peaceful dreams accompany you through the quiet hours ahead.